Okay, so now we are getting into the section 3, mixed economic system. Definition. So mixed economic system is somewhere between the planned economic system and market economic system. This is something between and something considered to be the most ideal for now. You probably don't know, most countries in the world should be mixed economic system. Like America is mixed economic system, China is mixed economic system. No pure market economic system, no pure planned economic system. I mean, even North Korea might not be purely planned economic system. Let's give the definition right here. So, mixed economic system, change it, system combined government planning and ownership resources with the use of the free economic system to determine the allocation of resources in the economy. You see, it's a combination. It's very much a combination of both. So, why we use mixed economic system? It is basically we want to prevent the bad things in the market economic system. We mentioned about the bad thing, the disadvantages of the market economic system, known as market failure. And in fact, why we advocate, why we like mixed economic system, because government intervention can address these problems one by one. So the rest of the class, we are mainly about how government is able to prevent these things happen one by one. So the first approach, we are going to talk about regulation of price control. Okay, so this is the first one, price control. So there are actually two price, which is price ceiling and price floor. So these are the opposite, so let's choose one to explain. Let's draw the graph first. See, this is price, this is a quantity traded. Let's draw the demand and supply curve. So your imagined price ceiling is something up, but it's actually not. It's right here. And this is a price ceiling. Why? Let me explain. So basically, price ceiling is the setting of a maximum price for a certain product. It is always, it should be below the equilibrium price. So, this is equilibrium price. But why should it be below instead of above? Well, this is quite obvious. Not so obvious, sorry. But let's say if you set it over here, let's suggest you set it over here at the green line, what's the point? Like it will generally reset here at the equilibrium price. What's the point you set it even higher than the equilibrium price? It doesn't mean anything. if you set the price ceiling above the equilibrium price. Because in normal ways, it will naturally stay at the equilibrium price, but you want to set the maximum by manually, and it doesn't mean anything. You don't have to, if you don't want the price exceeds the green line, you don't have to set the ceiling because it will naturally stay at the equilibrium price. You want to set a maximum, and it should definitely be below the equilibrium price. Okay. So what is the purpose of price ceiling? There are different purposes. So let's think about the purpose of price law. The different purpose of price law. So the first thing is prevent producers from overcharging. It's just because you don't want the price that high, so you have set a maximum. You just don't want to produce set a too high price, so you set a maximum price yourself. The government set a price ceiling. The second thing is make certain type of goods affordable for low income. Why? So this type of good is often necessity. Government want everyone enjoy necessity. Government wants to ensure that everyone can afford necessity so they can survive in this society. This is why they make a price setting for the necessity so that the price will not go that high so everyone can enjoy necessity. These two are the main purposes. But as you can see, we also notice that there is the impact. What's the impact? It is very obvious because if you are sitting there, the price is at this place. This is the supply. This is the demand. So you see this part, it is actually causing a excess demand, which is also known as shortage. Okay. Now let's think the other way around. Okay, let's do right here. About the price floor. PQ demand and supply. So price floor has to be over equilibrium price with the same reason I mentioned above. What's the purpose of price floor? So I don't know. Do you ever listen to the term minimal wage? So it is actually a kind of price floor. Like the minimum wage in New York is maybe I don't know, maybe $30 per hour. I don't know, that kind of thing. They said but I mean we just don't usually call labor a kind of product because it is a little bit disrespectful. But minimum wage is it's actually a kind of price floor in the labor market. So the first purpose is to protect earning of low income people. Like, we don't want them to earn so less, so we set a minimum wage, so at least they can earn that much. Minimum wage. The second thing is prevent the overconsumption of dairy goods. Okay, so it kind of let's go back. We said that one of the market failure is the externality, including the overconsumption of dairy goods. Why we set a price floor so that the consumption of dairy goods go down? This is mainly because you see, if we set here with a higher price, it should be here. Like, we don't set a price floor, the quantity traded should be there. But if we set a price floor, the quantity traded should be here. So it goes from Q0 to Q, and there is a contraction in demand, as you can see, a contraction in demand. It might reduce the demands for dairy goods. That's why government is trying to do. Okay, but we also have the impact. You can see that there is this distance, and we have excess supply, which is called surplus. Okay, surplus. So we just introduced one kind of way to control. It is called price control. It can mainly deal with overcharging, make necessity affordable, protect the earning of low-income people, prevent the overconsumption of dairy goods. Okay. So the second way to control we are talking about is indirect tax. And subsidy. So as we learned before, indirect tax increase the production costs. Because you have to pay the tax, so the production cost naturally goes up. And subsidy do the opposite. They reduce the production cost. It makes supply goes down, it makes supply goes up. But we are going to learn more about how it works. We are first talking about indirect tax. So, Jesus. Am I writing too hard? I don't know. Better typing than writing, I think. Tax is something imposed expenditure to buy goods and services. We are going to learn that it is paid partly consumers partly by producers. This is something we need to know before. But how is it possible the consumer had to pay the tax and producer have to pay the tax as well? We're going to understand why both consumers and producers are responsible by graph. Okay, by graph. And graph is a very helpful and important way to understand indirect tax and subsidy. So obvious, you write, okay. Oh, no way. Also write supply and the demand curve. So as we mentioned, indirect tax increase production cost, so the supply decrease. So when supply decrease, we learn that it shifts to the left. It shifts to the left. Two, S1 to S2. So how do we show that? How do we show tax, the amount of tax imposed on the graph? So we use the vertical difference between S2 and S1. This is a little bit math, but I want you to understand. It is just because that you are selling the same quality, but the price, you can see is we randomly choose a point on Q, on axis Q, and you have to pay this more price. You have to pay this more, and this more is actually the tax. This more is actually the tax because for one amount you have to pay this more. You have to pay this more per quantity. So this is actually the tax. Just to let you know, this vertical difference is actually the tax. Let's draw some line. Let's use a different color. Maybe we can understand better. Maybe green. Oh, Jesus, it's so bad. It's so bad. So the original point is right here, and it moves to this way. Move along this. So the demand, there's a contraction in demand. And see P1, P2, Q1, Q2. So the original, let's see, the original total revenue, say total revenue, before it should be P1, Q1. Before, after. P1, Q1, and increase. In fact, if you earn this more, this kind of money does not belong to you. You have to pay this amount of tax from your total revenue. So what the total revenue you have after the imposition of tax is actually this part. Okay, actually this part. So the total revenue decreased from P1 Q1 to P7 Q2, P3 Q2. And then think about, so this part of belongs to the tax, and we are thinking about who pays them. So you see, let's change our perspective from producer to consumer. So just now we are thinking from the producer perspective, so let's go back to the consumer perspective. So consumers originally paid this much, like they paid P1, and when we offer a tax, we have to pay P2. So there is a increase in price from P1 to P2. So this part we pay more. Like this part is actually borne by consumers. And what about this kind of thing? So this part is from by consumers, and this part is actually by producer. You see? Let me repeat. There's increase from P1 to P2. So this part is actually produced, is actually born, this part of tax is actually paid by consumers because there is a price increase. And this part have to be paid by producer, because who can pay that? So the total tax is P2 P3. So this kind of longer, this P2 P3 times Q2. Okay, this is a total tax. So it's just this part is a total tax. You see that? Okay. So I don't know if you notice, we are also thinking about the effectiveness of indirect tax. So the tax might not be effective. Let's draw a different graph, very short graph. Like let's suppose supply are the same, and they are increased from the same time. Just we have different demand. If let's say demand goes like this, you see it's very flat. We choose a flat demand curve, and from the conclusion we get, it is this part. Test we get. So we want to, before talking about the effectiveness of indirect tax, we have to confirm the purpose of indirect tax. The purpose of indirect tax is two-part. Reduce the negative externality. That's to say, reduce the consumption of derivative goods. The second thing is more tax revenue. But you see that two things will actually is actually a paradoxical. The reason I'm going to talk later. And let's think about we can think about the effectiveness of different indirect tax. Suppose we have the same supply curve. They shift to the left with this much of tax. Let's choose a random but flat demand. By definition, we know that. So actually, this more is a tax, but we don't care about how much is it. We are thinking about. So when we are talking about the effectiveness of indirect tax, we usually don't look at how much tax revenue we earn. So the real purpose should be how we can reduce the negative externality, how we can reduce the consumption, the production of the goods. So you see, we actually decrease it from here to here, and this is quite flat. But if we do it differently, the demand curve is quite steady. So this is this amount of tax. I would say even the tax revenue is higher, but you only reduce the consumption from here to here, which is much less. Okay, you can see the grain thing. So the PD grain is obviously it is obviously less than 1. So this means it is inelastic. It is less than 1, okay, because it's so steady, it's less than 1. And it is inelastic, we often consider it to be ineffective. Relatively ineffective. Because you see, you cannot reduce consumption too much. And when we are looking at the red part, PD red, it is actually over 1 and it is elastic. And it is relatively effective because you reduce consumption so much larger. So this is a relationship between the effectiveness of indirect tax and the PED. I just want you to know that. It is related to the PED, and it is also actually related to the size of the tax, obviously. If you have a larger size, it has to be reduce the consumption by greater tax, which is quite obvious. Okay, so this is about the indirect tax part. Oh, and one more thing, you see that 1 PD is greater than 1. You can see that producer 1 larger than 1. You can see that producer actually pay more division of the tax. Okay. Let's go to subsidy. So subsidy is quite close to indirect tax. They share some of the similarity. We can use the same thinking method. Not totally different, but there are some things that are quite similar. Just it's a little bit weird. Sorry. So subdecision is this March, as we always also talk about demand, and this is always label the demand curve and the supply curve. So this one to S2, this part is a subsidy, and as we know that we also label, and this part, this Q1, Q2, is from Q1 to Q2, and originally the total revenue should be here. And please think about what's it's P1 Q1. Please think about the most the one that makes sense. What should be the total revenue after? Where should it be? Where does it make sense? Like, does it make sense that it moves from, does the total revenue after is, oh my god, okay, P2 Q2, it doesn't make sense. How come the price actually fell? The real is actually, so the reality is because producer doesn't really reduce your price. Actually, it should be right here. Like, it is actually P3 Q2. Does it blow your mind? Actually, when the supply curve shift from S1 to S2, producer can achieve a higher price because part of the subsidy is given to the producer. How come the producer receive a lower price after the subsidy? It doesn't make sense because a part of the subsidy is given to the producer. Producer also take benefits from it. So the subsidy makes them even higher. It goes to P3. It is P3 actually. And total one is P3 to Q2. And what about the consumer expenditure? Let's think from the consumer perspective. So the original price is P1, and now it is P3? No. It's actually the total, the consumer expenditure, the price they pay is actually P2. So in the first place, they are P1, but in the end, it is actually P2. Isn't it incredible? So this part of subsidy is enjoyed by consumer, and this part is by consumer. Okay. Producer. So I don't know if you noticed that consumer originally they pay P1, but now they pay P2, and consumer the origin a producer they originally earn P1, but now they earn P3. The price go up, and the price the consumer pay they go down. And this box is actually the subsidy, exact amount of subsidy that government has to pay. Okay. What's the purpose of this kind of subsidy? So when we're talking about an indirect tax, the purpose is reduce the negative externality. So this is exactly the opposite, increase the positive externality. Which means increase increase the production, increase the production of public goods, merit goods, etc. So they want to improve the production. You can see from the graph, the quantity traded increased from Q1 to Q2. The consumption of public goods or merit goods are increasing. And if you go back, actually one of the market failure we mentioned disadvantages is that public goods are underprovided and merit goods are underconsumed. So this exactly solve the problem. Okay. Maybe you should, I think, let me give you some suggestion. I think after the class, you should draw these two diagrams yourself, and you should try to explain them in simple words. Okay? Let's talk about, let's talk about the third one. Regulation and legislation. This is quite obvious. They are quite simple, this one, because we don't usually test on this two. So it is mainly about policy. So this part I'm going to type it out because it is simple for both of us. So mainly about policy. For example, competition policy. This can prevent monopoly. So enter there. Environmental policy. This can prevent negative externality, etc. Different policy has their effect. So Let's give you a regular definition. Regulation are legal rules made by a government to control how something is done or how people or firms behave. People fail to obey the rules have to pay significant fines. Okay, so you can tell that this kind of thing they have to be enforced by military or police. This is the importance of police, but that does not include it. It is not included in the course. Finally, we have the next one, called privatization and nationalization. This is quite easy to understand, but let's type it out. But not really the hardest one. So I will give you the definition of nationalization, and the privatization is exactly the opposite of nationalization. So a government may set up an industry or nationalize a private sector. Private sector industry. The aim of public or cooperation or corporation or state-owned enterprise is to work in the public interest. So the purpose is mainly to work something for the public, to work something for the citizens. One is to address one of the market failure we mentioned before, abuse of monopoly power. Now think about it. If there is a monopoly in a market, to prevent that they set too high prices, government would do something. It might just nationalize that kind of industry so they can control the price themselves. Therefore, you don't have to pay that high price. To produce more merit goods. So if government take control the industry, they can produce what they want. So they want more merit goods and public goods. That's the purpose. The purpose, and I will say privatization is the opposite. But what's the opposite? What's the opposite? What's the purpose of the privatization? We don't really care about the definition right now. We don't really care about the the definition now, but we are curious about the purposes of privatization. Let me tell you. So, purposes of privatization. The first one is I think I don't have to use more. The purpose is simple: reduce administration costs and enable the producer respond more quickly to changing condition or consumer demand. Because there are a lot of procedures of state-owned enterprise. So if you wanted to react more quickly to public demand, to consumer demand, you might want to privatization. Okay. Oh, I think we are going to in depth talk about the pros and cons of state-owned enterprise or nationalization. Pros. Let's think about pros. So as I said, if it is controlled by government, governments consider the externality. They make more rational decisions. They can produce more metal goods. They can produce more public goods. And if it is controlled normally, it will not produce monopoly. It will not abuse its public market power. And in this way, it can ensure basic industry charge low prices and produce good quality. So full costs and benefits involved or considered, not abuse its market power or no monopoly, not ensure basic industry to set lower prices with higher quality. There looks weird. And there are actually a lot more. For example, can make planning and coordination easier because everything is controlled by one single government, so you can better coordinate, distribute this in a more efficient way. But the most important are the first three things. Can also influence economic activity. What about the cons? So as I said, there are a lot of annoying procedures in state-owned enterprise. First thing, just might be inefficient. And if you take over the production and the market is going down, it is your government are responsible to give subsidies. So lead to subsidized if they are loss making. The last one, difficult to control due to bureaucracy. I don't think yeah. The first two are important. Okay. First three are important, very important. The last one is direct provision. This basically says that government just directly produce that kind of product. I don't want to give any more explanation. It's just basically give you the thing you need, nothing more. Okay. So let's think about what different approaches of control or intervention of government deal with what kind of market failure. So price control, it can help with externality because let's use a different color. Can help with externality because it can prevent from overcharging. You see, because it can prevent the overconsumption of the metal goods. And indirect tax, it can also prevent monopoly. You see, because it can prevent from overcharging. And for indirect tax and subsidies, I think it is also about externality. It solves the problem of externality. Subsidy, it can prevent the markets from overconsumption. And for the subsidization, it can increase it can solve the problem of under provision of public goods and merit goods. For regulation and legislation, it can prevent monopoly, it can prevent information failure, that sort of things. Okay, so this is the end of this lesson. Today we basically review chapter 2, important concept in chapter 2. Section 1 is basically about market economic system, the advantages and disadvantages of it. And section 2 is about market failure, which is so after introducing the market economic system, we talk about how it might go wrong, where it can go wrong. And section 3, we talk about the solution come up these centuries. So economists decide to build up mixed economic system, a kind of thing between market economic system and planned economic system, sort of a combination. And this help to deal with market failure. How? By government intervention. So we talk about how governments can do that by price control, by indirect tax and subsidy, by legislation and regulation, by privatization and nationalization, and direct provision. Okay, that's the end. Thank you for listening.